You're listening to My Pop 5, a pop culture podcast about people. Today, we open up with a song from our guest, Layne.
Tear my heart out, the kind of bad I want to hold me down now, 'cause I've been feeling like a boy again. I know you don't like being alone on the floor again. I know you don't like being alone, 'cause I just wanna get
Hello, and welcome back to My Pop 5, the show in which we bring on guests and have them break down 5 pieces of pop culture that had an influence on them or helped shape them to become the people that they are today. That opening tune was titled Monday by an incredible singer and songwriter, Layne, and she just so happens to be on the show today. I'm your host, Ryan, and today, producer Daniel and I get to spend some time with Layne and talk about all of her favorite musical artists, movies, true crime, and the way that these things have shaped her as an artist. We also spend some time talking about the struggles of being a female creator in a male-dominated space, UFOs, her working relationship with a former guest on the show, Devon, and just about everything in between. She's such an awesome person, and we loved our time with her. So let's get into it. Here's our chat with Layne. Okay, we are here with Layne, the incredible singer, songwriter, artist. She is a good friend of mine. I am so excited you're here. So thank you for coming, Layne.
I'm stoked to be here. I think this is rad. I was just waiting for you. I'm like, I hope you asked me.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of nervous, I'll be honest.
Why? I told Devon, I was like, I hope he asked me. I want to be on it.
I think it was like, I don't know, because part of me is like, was stuck on like, because it hadn't been released yet. Yeah. And so in my head, I was thinking like, does it make more sense once it's out and I can like explain the concept a little better and then like she knows what the thing is? Or is it better to be like sight unseen, hey, you want to come do this thing?
I would do it in a heartbeat. I've been wanting to like do a podcast, like start my own, but it's a huge undertaking. So seeing you guys do it is kind of rad, inspiring.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
No, but yeah, we're super stoked. I have a really funny story. I was in Seattle yesterday and I was wearing my Layne t-shirt.
Hell yeah.
And when I was walking around, someone saw me and was like, oh, dude, Layne, she's so sick.
No way.
Yeah. So I was like,
dope.
Dang. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
It was really cool. So I was repping you and people noticed.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
that's surprising, honestly, but awesome.
No, you kick ass. So I'm not surprised about it. Sorry, as we get started, I like to ask everyone, without any context or comment, tell us what your pop 5 is.
Tim Burton was on there. Joan, Jett, Fly, that first record. Dixie Chicks record. I know I have indie movies on there. Yeah, that genre, just in general, is very inspiring to me. And true crime, yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
I was really interested in the true crime side of things. Yeah. What got you into true crime and where did that start for you?
I've always been super interested in like the dark shit, and it's weird because I Devon and I talk about it a lot. It's a lot of women are into true crime. That's actually how I started listening to podcasts initially, was like My Favorite Murder and all those. But yeah, when I was a kid, my mom and I would watch like SVU, Law and Order. We used to watch this show called Dr. G Medical Examiner, which is like literally she does autopsies and like solves crimes, and it's real. She's a real medical examiner. But I was always just like super fascinated by like murder and crime and all that shit, and it just never went away. And now it's strange, but it's like relaxing to me to listen to like a brutal murder when I'm driving across the country or something. I just love it.
Tell us a bit about your background. I know you're not from LA originally. Where are you from?
So I'm from Rapid City, South Dakota, in the Black Hills. Really pretty place to grow up. Not the best place to stay, but I'm actually going back next week, so we'll see how that goes.
Just to visit family?
Yeah, I'm going to surprise my mom.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was her birthday and Mother's Day. And I was like, yeah, we ordered you something. And so I'm going to go surprise her. Because I haven't been home in like a year at least. Yeah. But yeah, I graduated high school early and then moved to LA when I was 17.
Yeah. And so the time that you were describing watching those shows with your mom, that was when you were in high school?
No, when I was like, she'll probably be mad at me for saying that, but I was like a little kid. Like, we would just lay in bed and like eat snacks and watch SVU when I was like, I don't know, 8.
I think that's common for a lot of people because I had a similar experience with my mom, like specifically Law and Order, right?
Law and Order is the shit. It's like,
yeah. And my mom still likes like a lot of the shows, like the procedurals like that, but also like the First 48. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. So like, I think it's like a weird thing. Maybe it's just us too, but like I feel like because of that,
do you like true crime too?
I have like spurts with it. So like I like some of them. Like I really got into the first season of Serial when that one came out. Like I like the ones like the Nexium cult documentary that came out.
Dude, you should listen to what's the cult? It's the one with T and Doe is the names of the cult leaders. It's a really famous cult. It's the cult where they like were wearing the Nikes. Oh yes. There's a whole like series on that, and it's the daughter of one of the cult leaders.
Oh shoot.
And it's crazy. You need to listen to it. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, true crime. I don't know. I think it's a lot of women tend to like it. Have you seen this is what I was gonna say? Have you seen Bill Hader's impression of? Oh my god.
No, is it?
You know the dude from what is it? It's like it's not Cold Case Files. You would recognize his voice instantly, but Bill Hader does a perfect impression of him. Yeah, and he's like, quickly they're talking about 2 little girls being murdered. He's like, quickly their LOLs turn to WTFs or whatever. Voice it's funny.
That is funny. Another one that I really, really liked was they did like 6-part series or something on the OJ murder too. So yeah, I do like it, but it's not like something that I'm selective. Like there's something that draws me in.
I kind of go through phases though too. I'll go through a phase where I'm listening to a lot of podcasts, and then sometimes I don't. But
do you have like a favorite one?
I used to really like I like My Favorite Murder, but that's more lighthearted, and you feel like you kind of get to know them, and then it becomes just kind of like in the background. I'll put it on. But Serial I really liked. There's one called Root of Evil that's about the family of the Black Dahlia killer. Really like that one. I feel like I listen to new ones a lot, but there's a couple. I used to like Sword and Scale, but that guy is a fucking misogynist. Sorry, should I not?
Yeah, you can curse as much as you want. Yeah. What I thought was interesting when I saw that you put true crime on is when I was at your place, like you knew all the facts about like a murder that took place in your apartment. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, so I was stoked, obviously, but we were like looking for apartments, and we found this one on Craigslist. The pictures weren't that great, but we were like, it's good price, good location. We went and looked at it, and it was like beautiful, like big windows, huge, like old 50s, like a bar and everything. And we're like, she said it had been sitting vacant for like a month, which is weird in Highland Park. And so we Googled it later because we were trying to figure out how to lay out the living room. We were going to see if maybe someone had posted like photos from inside with furnished. Yeah. The first thing that comes up is an LA Times article about the slaying of a mother and a child in our apartment building. But it was actually the apartment. So we have like our front door, and then maybe 6 feet across, there's another door. And that's where the murder happened. And there's an LA Times article. It talks about how there was blood all up the stairs. Yeah. And they never found out who did it, but they were killed with an unidentified stabbing object, which is like, what the hell is that? You know? And it was 2 little girls and a mom, and one of the little girls lived, so she saw the whole thing. She would be like 30 now.
Jeez.
Well, wait, so what do you know when it was, or like what year?
Yeah, it was like in the late 80s, so it was a while ago. But I always wonder because our stairs on coming up are painted like a dark maroon. Yeah. But there's crime scene photos, and there's like blood all the way up our. It's weird. And I asked our neighbors that live in the apartment if anything, like I'm just like, has anything ever? And they're like, yeah, there's parts of the apartment that are like creepy as hell, but my apartment's like doesn't feel bad at all.
Yeah, I wonder, as we were like talking about this, like you brought up how women are mostly like into true crime, and you had this obsession with it, like what the driving factor is, like why is it that it's stimulating?
Well, I think Devon and I talked about this too, but I think it's something to do with like, and I noticed people that like true crime sometimes have anxiety as well. I think there's something about it. It's like maybe because it's not happening to you, it's like kind of peeking behind the curtain to see like what's my biggest fear, not you. So there's like this fascination with it or something.
I'm sure there's like many spurts of like adrenaline or like you mentioned fear. And so like those little things, like you're safe, but also you get that rush.
I also am obsessed with like the psychology of it. Like I love watching serial killer interviews. I love watching interviews with sociopaths. Like I'm obsessed with what's going on because it's so opposite of me. Like I'm very like empathetic. So I don't know. I'm just fascinated. And the mind games, like the conversations between like a really well-trained detective and a killer, it's so fascinating to see how they like use body language to get them to say certain things, or like, I don't know. It's there's all sorts of things that are fascinating about it.
I wonder too, like, do you like the like courtroom side of it? Like the like figuring out if it was who the killer was or anything, or it's more...
I mean, I like the investigative part, the court stuff. I'll watch it, but like I like knowing about like I was following the Golden State Killer when they caught him, and that was fascinating to see like them tracing DNA and stuff. But yeah, I don't know, I'm not super interested in like the legal side of it, like the like the prosecutor or whatever.
I don't necessarily like the legal jargon aspect of it, but I think like I like how a lot of like Serial did a great job of this, and Law and Order kind of does the same thing where it's like all the facts and evidence is pointing one direction. Yeah. And then there's something else that you're like, oh shit, that everything we just thought like has now been thrown out of the window.
Yeah,
so,
I like that. I do like that part. And then I've done a lot of like learning about how profiling like came about through those processes where they can like profile somebody and it's almost always exactly who it is. Yeah. Or like the description is fascinating.
One of the best examples of that, there's this HBO doc called I Love You Now Die. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I've heard of that, yeah.
It's basically, there's the case a few years ago about the girl who, like, her boyfriend was threatening to kill himself, and she would text him, and the last day when he actually did it, she basically responded and said, just do it. You need to do it. Yeah. And so, like, the whole case was like, what obligation does a texter have on someone's life? And so one thing that was crazy is like the whole first episode, you're like, this girl is crazy. Like she has every reason to go to jail, all this stuff. And then like at the very end, it's only 2 parts. At the very end of the first part, they flip it and you're like, oh no. And so then the whole second episode is like showing the counter argument from why she wasn't responsible and some of the awful things the guy did. And so
I've seen her sentencing, like the video of it, and it's really hard to watch because you just see this like young girl being told like her life's gone, and she's like, you can see how devastating.
And she was like so stoic like through that trial. And what's also crazy is like any murder trials specifically or anything that involves like death, like they go on forever. So like the time from when the event happened to when there's any sort of sentencing is like years in the making. And so she's a completely different person in some aspects, you know?
Totally. Can you imagine being sent to jail for something you did when you were, 16 or whatever? Just like,
or text messages. Yeah. Like in that instance, like they play the case and like how it's like there is some responsibility, but like you have like murder charges in some aspect because someone said, I'm going to kill myself. And you said, yeah, do it. You know, like the responsibility of a text message, I think is like,
well, that's
crazy.
A whole nother argument. The interesting thing is because people on Twitter will be like, go kill yourself. Yeah. Does that mean that if they do, or is that person responsible?
And that's like one of the biggest things that they were saying in this documentary was, are we setting a legal precedent to where like now there is that situation where they can be like, we can call back on that same case. Right. I think what they determined is there was a point that he got out of the car. So she told him like the way he killed himself was So basically, he like texted her and called her, and he got out of the car. He said, "I couldn't do it. I was scared." And she said, "Get back in." Yeah. Okay. And so it's like that secondary step is where they were like, he reached out for help. Yeah. It was clear that like he wasn't going to do it anyway. He told you, "I was scared. I can't do this anymore," and you told him to get back in. And so that takes it to a whole new zone. Anyway,
I think that's for me what interests me about those, the true crime stuff is just the way that there's always some discussion on law and order, justice. Is it necessarily just to put a kid away for the rest of their life?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a question that we're constantly discussing.
Well, even now with everything that's been going on just socially and politically, there's so many kids that get sent away for their life for doing something when they were like 15 on the streets. And it's like, is that, I mean, it's not helpful necessarily. It doesn't mean these kids are like monsters. They're just brought up in a, you know, different environment. But
sorry, no, and that goes just into our legal system in general, right? Which is like, it's not rehabilitation, it's punishment. Our system isn't designed to help people improve. And so it is like, for a lot of these people, their lives are over, right? Even if it's, 10 years, the amount of things that happened between I was 15 and when I was 25 are huge. That's a huge portion of your life.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people, when they come out, it's hard to get a job. It's hard to do anything. So like, it almost is a life sentence, even if it's not a life sentence in terms of like the impact that it has.
I wonder if there would be a way to evaluate I think evaluating if someone is able to feel empathy or like understand. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if someone's going to be a danger to society.
Yeah.
If it was like circumstantial, if they did something like a drive-by shooting or something when they're 15 because of they've got a bunch of other kids around them saying we need to do this thing. That doesn't mean that guy's going to come out and start murdering people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it's like that's like where there needs to be some sort of reform in the system, right? Because like in that example, it could be he was pressured and he's trying to help his mom make money and he gets involved in gang activity because that's a way he's making money, right? And so like if they know, like it doesn't change the fact that maybe if he did kill someone that it's wrong, right? But it's also like the decision making, there's a reason that it got to this level, and it wasn't, maybe it is premeditated murder, but not like in the sense of like this person's crazy, right? It was like circumstance.
Well, that's why if you look, have you ever looked into like the prison systems in Norway and all the they treat it completely differently. And sometimes I'm like, okay, this guy doesn't deserve to be living this well. But I think there's maybe a middle ground of like giving someone the tools to understand what they did and stuff. But because in those prison systems, they have like basically little apartments and they're able to like work jobs and make music or do whatever, but they have to stay on, on the campus. But it allows them to like be people and want to be better. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
I think like this whole true crime era of what we're doing, and it really did rise with podcasting, right? Serial and was like the number one podcast forever. And like there is like 50% of Apple Podcasts or something is true crime related.
My Favorite Murder was like number one on iTunes for ever. And they sell out the Staples Center.
Jeez.
Like 2 nights in a row.
Yeah. What I think is like crazy though is like in Serial, because of that podcast, like it allowed them to like at least start conversations for reopening the case. And we saw it with like Tiger King and stuff too, where like people were wanting to pardon Joe Exotic. But like, I wonder, there isn't any sort of like, if you work for the New York Times, there is a journalistic standard to what you can do to publish something. Yeah. There's no journalistic standard for like publishing a podcast. So like there is like a spectrum of it being journalistic and you have sources and you vetted your sources. And then there's some that's like kind of speculative. Yeah. And so like, I wonder like people who finished watching Making a Murderer or listening to Serial are like, he's innocent. But it's like, there are some podcasts where you can probably do that with because they do all their facts. But then there's also some where you're just like, that's probably just some dude's opinion. And they made a lot of leaps and speculating in order to kind of come to these conclusions. So it's also kind of dangerous. I'm like nervous about like this trend because I don't know, there are no standards for being able to talk about these murders as we're talking about them now.
Yeah. But I mean, it's kind of like an overall arching thing with anything, YouTube, the internet in general. People can just say whatever the fuck they want.
Well, I mean, and it just goes, it's a rabbit hole now, but like, it just goes into like, there used to be consensus because of like journalists like really try like for a lot of really established institutions to vet things. And there's a standard for what you can print. Like I reference the New York Times because they're one of the ones that do that. But then when you have people who like our former president who say like, it's not factual, right? Yeah. People are running with that, not understanding how hard it is to get anything published in like the New York Times or, established newspapers and things like that. So
I think people don't like either a lot of people want things face value, quick, fast, and they don't like to really dig through, what's actually going on, what evidence
Yeah.
are you using. And that's where journalistic integrity, but now that there's so many sources and you can just go online and follow some person and take their word as Bible, it's just, it's toxic. It's scary.
And there is no consensus, right,
Yeah.
of what fact is. There should be, right?
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful that all three of us here in this room can like confirm that there would be some sort of objective truth in some capacity.
Yeah.
But like there are some people who are like, there is no consensus because your facts are your facts. It doesn't mean they are the facts.
Yeah.
And that's not true. There is an objective truth, and like
Yes.
we need to be seeking what that is.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
But I think to bring it back to just the popularity of true crime, whether it's documentaries or podcasts, I think that like we're kind of in the baby stages where we don't understand fully what the power of the internet is. I think people are at least having conversations that maybe 20, 30 years ago, like people weren't really talking about. Like people would just consume the media, and it was also, 9/11 had just happened. So I think there was a very strong consensus of like where we needed to be going as a country. And I think now, because of the internet, there are so many conversations that are happening that are, reopening cases, like you said, or re-examining evidence that we had, maybe looking at it in a new light. Like there is at least the early stages of a information kind of revolution.
Yeah. On the positive side though of the internet, like even when I was in high school, and being gay when I was in high school was like still not chill, and it's still not in a lot of places, but because of the internet, I think a lot of people, even people that aren't in the gay community, have been educated about what that means, and it's becoming less stigmatized. And I think a lot more people are okay with it because they're seeing what it actually looks like, which is a positive thing.
It's exposure, right? I think like there's also like an aspect of so many cultures were so sheltered, right? And like whether it was media not really showing this, like a lot of these places had just never met a gay person, or not knowingly, right? Like the people were closeted,
they didn't know what
or
it
whatever.
looked like. Yeah.
Exactly. And so like when they realize, oh, there are these people that have amazing stories and they're amazing people, and they're just, they have a different sexuality than I do. That's okay. And it's like the same with race too. Like there are so many people who have gone their whole life potentially having never met a black person.
Yeah.
Right. Depending on where you live. And like the exposure and the conversations like you were talking about due to the internet and social media is like expanding that to be like, oh, now I have exposure to all these places of the world that I never had access to, even if it's just a couple states away.
Yeah.
It does make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think about like Black Lives Matter protests, I think happened last year in all 50 states, like everywhere. And then all over the world, just to have that kind of support behind a movement that has been, for the most part, like completely grassroots.
Yeah, that
from
was
the ground up.
We went to one in Highland Park, and it was the most emotional thing I've ever experienced. I mean, it was thousands of people, all different. I live in a predominantly like Hispanic neighborhood, and they were all holding signs that said, like we stand. Just all sorts of people. Billie Eilish was out there, and like Muna, that band. Like there were tons of people out there, and we all got down on York Boulevard for 9 minutes in silence with thousands of people, and it was like spiritual to see all these people come together and just be like, fuck yeah, we're behind this, we're behind you. Like it was beautiful.
Yeah,
and what's
that's
crazy is like that moment is the same stuff you read in history books when you were in school, right? Whether it's the Martin Luther King marches or whatever, like it's the same thing, right? I don't know what textbooks are going to look like in 25 years for kids, but like I'm hopeful that it's like some like being able to capture the stuff that we went through in this past year is 2020 has to be in the history books, right?
Yeah,
and so
for
like,
sure.
we are living in those moments, and like I know I had the questions, right? And I think there was like teachers might even ask like, if that were to happen today, like which side would you want to be on? Would you want to be marching with them or that? And like we just had that experience to be able to say like, were we willing to go up? And
are you on the right side of history?
Yeah.
My parents have always said that. Like, hopefully, I have been hearing some like debate about whether or not they're going to put more Black history in school systems. Because I didn't get maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think kids need to be like educated on that stuff. Like it's weird. And some schools don't even teach evolution.
I think things are having to change though. I mean, just because if I was sitting in my elementary classroom, what would I be seeing? And like, it's just like a bunch of white dudes on, all around
100%,
all around the room, right? There was no women the bulletin boards, right? The maybe Harriet Tubman once
Yeah.
a month or something, or
Yeah, yeah.
once a year.
Yeah.
But other than that, like it's all just these white dudes, right?
Mhm.
And now it might be the same thing with one black dude on
Yeah.
for Obama or
Yeah.
something. But like I have to imagine like things are going to have to change, like, and exposure to like those types of conversations where these history books are going to have to include other aspects of the story, not just the one predominant voice.
Something that blew my mind was one of my friend's little sisters was in school, and they have coming out days now at schools, and I was like, that's rad. And I guess I'm sure, but they're in California schools. I'm sure in other places parents might not like that, but
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. At like high school, everyone just wears like pride stuff, even if you're not. You know how you do in high school? They have like spirit days or whatever.
That's got to
They
be
do those.
terrifying. You know, I watched this movie Moxie on Netflix the other day.
I haven't seen it yet.
It's actually pretty good. One of the things that they do, and I'm not trying to spoil it if you intend to watch it, but there's like a moment where they're like trying to start a movement in some capacity. And like the way they like spread the news is like through kind of like zines, like
Yeah.
old zines. And she creates like these zines and it's like, hey, if you're on board with this, write stars and hearts on your hand and show up the next day. And I'm like, yeah, that's powerful. And you might feel comfortable, like there's going to be more than just me
Right.
doing this. And so I'm not isolated.
Totally.
But if you're the only person who does it,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's kind of the same thing. Like I'm just putting myself in the shoes of like,
Yeah.
I want to do this, but I'm like, what if I'm the
Yeah.
only person?
Yeah,
As
yeah,
much
yeah.
as there is like this strive for solidarity, and I imagine with these coming out days, like, yes, everyone wears this ribbon tomorrow or whatever
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
thing is. If you're the only one wearing the ribbon, you're like,
Yeah, you're
shit.
putting a target on your back. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I also don't think it's like encouraging kids to come out. It's more like a pride
Oh,
day.
got it.
But they called it coming out day. But I mean, that would be kind of fucked up if you're like, okay, everyone needs to come out of the closet today.
No, I think it was like the way I took it was just more like, hey, if this is something you're already wanting to do,
Right.
but not wanting to be alone in this endeavor,
Yeah.
like here's an opportunity
Yeah.
to be able to.
I think
do
it's
so.
more like they have all the kids where it's more of like a like allies and like, you know,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Just to
Definitely.
acknowledge, but that would be so fucked up if it's like, okay, everyone who's gay has to put this hat on and come to school.
Do you think you would have? I'll start by saying I don't know much about what the cultural opinions are of
Yeah.
South Dakotans. Do you think you would have
Well,
liked something like that?
I am the least school spirited human being that walks the earth. I don't participate in any school like shit like that. But I think it would have been nice to know that, like,
People support you.
yeah, I mean, for sure, it would have been great. But I don't know. My town is kind of half and half. There are a lot of forward thinking people mixed in with, like, I don't know if you guys know who Tommy Lauren is.
Oh yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
I don't. Yeah.
She's
Oh yes,
You know.
yeah. I always,
So-
I always forget who she is because I mispronounced it. I read it
Yeah.
wrong, and I always thought it was Tommy.
oh yeah, it is spelled weird.
Yeah, and so like now that
Yeah,
you say,
so
I know.
she went to, there's 2 high schools in my hometown. She went to the other high school, and I know a ton of people that know her, but she's from my hometown. So if that gives you any inkling of,
She's roughly our age.
Yeah, she
right?
is.
Yeah.
like, I have friends that know her and like went to high school with her, and she's always been that way, and her family is very
Yeah.
interesting. Mm-hmm.
Also, bring it back to the true crime stuff that we're talking about. These are conversations that like Plato and Socrates are having as
Mhm.
well. Like, what is justice? What is? Why are people the way that they are? I think there's something about that that's very intrinsic to the human experience that is so fascinating about those shows. You know?
Yeah, I think this isn't really related to true crime, but I've been following kind of they call them UAPs now, but these UFOs essentially.
Mhm.
And to me, the fact that the Pentagon has released them. They're on June 1st, Biden's talking to the cabinet about these UFOs because they're real and they're out there. We don't know what they are, right? It's real. They've released videos. People have a really hard time understanding that, like, that is more plausible. I mean, think about how infinite the universe is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's not like that can never happen. They're
Yeah.
seeing these things every day. Like, they have thousands of videos that they haven't released. The guy that worked in the Obama administration, they had a UFO like department
Mm.
because obviously it's a threat to national security if we have something
Yeah.
flying over our skies, you know. But I'm so fascinated and curious by it because I'm like, wow, you know,
Yeah.
you can't believe everything you hear, but to me, that's exciting. Like,
Yeah.
there's something, but so many people are like, no, there's no way. There's no fucking way. And I'm like, really? Because there was no way that if I showed a person in the Victorian era a nuclear bomb, they'd be like, what the fuck is this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There is a new, so they're studying the physics of these things because they fly. Have you seen the videos?
Mm-mm.
It's fucking crazy. You need to watch them. The Pentagon released them.
Sure.
But they thought they were defying the laws of physics, so they're thinking like, what is it? Recently, they've been understanding that physics. We think we know physics. Obviously, we've always thought we know these things, but quantum physics is opening up this whole new thing that we don't understand, and it's basically like gravitational movement. And the way these things move is exactly that. So they can go from right here in the sky to underwater, move like crazy increments. They don't have any wings. They look like a tic tac basically, and they're everywhere. The Navy sees them all the time. They have an official report. They have to report them. It's crazy. They're fucking flying everywhere, like especially on the coast of California and the coast of the East Coast, in other countries. But there's all these scientists are going, oh shit, this could really be something, because they're realizing with quantum physics how these things might work.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. And I'm like, then you hear people being like, there's no way. And I'm like, really, dude? I'm holding a computer in my, if I showed you this 20 years ago, you'd be like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
You know?
We'll get back to the show in just a moment. No, this isn't an ad read, but we do have a couple things that we'd love to share. I've been getting quite a few questions about how you can support the show. The truth is you're already doing it by listening, but if you're looking to do a little bit more, the best way is to support our show is to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Rating and reviewing truly does make all the difference for podcasts. So leave us a review, and in that review, tell us what your Pop 5 is, and we'll read it on the show. Another way to help us out is just following us on Instagram at MyPop5. We post short recaps of the show and include video or music clips that are referenced in the episode. They're some of our favorite pieces of content to produce. Anyway, thank you again for listening, and we'll get back to the show. I want to get onto some of this other stuff here. But first, you have quite a bit of musical things on here, and I absolutely love your work as a musician. So can you tell me, how did you get involved with music? When did you start playing? Is your family very musical?
Yeah. Well, I've always played. Like my dad, you know this, but I guess we're on a podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad is a musician. He plays fiddle, and I grew up around a bunch of musicians because his friends were all musicians, and we just always had instruments everywhere. And yeah, I started playing there's videos of me as a little kid, like holding a mandolin because I couldn't hold a guitar and jamming out. And I was just, my parents' friends would come over and play in the living room. I was always going to shows and stuff. And I just was always playing instruments. And then my brother played in bands. And so I started writing songs when I was 5 or 6. And then I just kept doing it, It was always just something I did. And then as I got older, when I was, 6th, 7th grade, I started a pop punk band. And I always had little fake bands in elementary school and stuff. But yeah, I don't even remember a moment.
Sure.
It was just always
around.
what I did,
Yeah.
I brought my guitar in 1st grade for show and tell, I just always played.
What was the reception like from your peers? Was it oh, it's so cool, Layne's a musician, or is it
Yeah, I think so. But I also think I wanted ego in me was I wanted people to care more because it's, when you're a kid, no one really gives a fuck. but yeah, some people did.
Yeah.
But I always felt there wasn't in my grade, there wasn't a whole lot of kids that did what I did. And there's a young girl that still lives in my hometown. She's in high school now that I used to teach. I used to teach songwriting classes for kids when I was in high school. And I recently talked to her because she's now thinking about moving to Nashville or whatever. And she said that in her grade, she's got a lot of friends that play music and stuff. And I never had anyone like that in high school. So I was always kind of on an island of my own.
Yeah.
I had bands, but no one ever took it. I took it so seriously. My 7th grade band, Jimmy Darkness. I had we had rehearsals 5 days a week. We had binders. We had our set list written out. We would record demos, and then I was I found a notebook when I went home last the guys started smoking weed. And I was like, they're going to ruin the band. Like, I was like so fucking into it.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, I always just felt like I was on an island of my own. Like I was different, I guess.
So which one came first in your life? Was it the Dixie Chicks record or was it Joan Jett?
I mean, I guess both, but the Dixie Chicks record I was listening to when I was like 5. Like that, I remember just being obsessed with that record. Like I loved it. It was like the first record that when I was a little kid that I would like analyze, you know? You remember that? I mean, I did that with other records. As I got a little bit older, I started getting into more like pop punk and the first All American Rejects record and stuff like that. But when I was a little kid, before like it's cool, that I would just loved that record. I was obsessed with it, and I still love it.
What do you think it was like, or who introduced it to you? Was it your parents, or how did you come across?
Probably my mom or dad or something. But I was always listening. My mom told me recently that when I was little, like 3, 4, I was obsessed with this Little Richard Kids album.
Yeah.
But I think the drums, that's what I liked in the Dixie Chicks record. Because my brother wasn't quite old enough to be into like the music that I eventually started listening to. It was because of him. But yeah, that record, I think because it had like drums and like something, I don't know. It's just also a fantastic fucking record.
Yeah, I mean, it is like the epitome of like that era country music in some aspects, right? It was very innovative because that group started off as like a bluegrass band, you know, but like then when they transitioned into pop country, like we would do it today, like the sounds, if you go back and listen to it now, sound like, you know, oh, I've heard this a million times, but it was like innovative for that time. And then like they encapsulated what that sound was for that.
I also remember really liking, I cut my hair like Natalie Maines, and I got made fun of so much at school because I looked like a little boy. But I remember loving like how they looked because they had kind of an alt like look about them.
Yeah.
And then later when they said that thing about President Bush, I was like, oh, they're like
metal.
Yeah, they're metal, dude. They're so metal.
Yeah. I mean,
I grew up with bluegrass too, so maybe that's how I don't remember how I got introduced to the record, but I just remember being like, there's something like sick about this.
Do you have a favorite song on the record? Or songs?
I love so many songs. Cowboy, Take Me Away.
Yeah. That has to be that one, yeah.
Goodbye Earl. Yeah. Another classic. That video is so sick. True crime.
True crime,
They murdered the dude, put him in the trunk, and they look cool as fuck. Like, it's dope.
Yeah, it's been so interesting. I think, I mean, they go by the Chicks now. But like one of my favorite records of all last year was their new record that came
I haven't
out last
even
year.
really listened to it because I'm scared to
You have to. I think it's so incredible because, I mean, and this isn't like I'm not breaking news in terms of the music industry, but like a lot of this record, it's not their songs, right? Like they have Nashville writers that write the songs and they're just performing, right? But she had like a pretty horrific divorce. Yeah. And so it's almost all their writing on the new record. Cool. And they worked with Jack Antonoff.
Oh, sick.
So it's like just them and Jack Antonoff. And it is like one of my favorite records of
I'm going
the
to have
past
to
few
listen
years.
to it.
It's so good. But I brought it up because like they've done like collaborations and things like that where like I think on the most recent Taylor record and Haim, they like are doing some of like the same Goodbye Earl type of stuff. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, it's so cool to like go back and listen to like Goodbye Earl because I'm just like, oh man, this is like, it's coming back in a weird way.
Oh,
like
totally.
this.
That whole scene, like I'm even like my newer stuff is, there's something about it that feels almost like the shit that was cheesy in like early 2000s, like the Ashley Simpson, like the acoustic guitar, but like kind of rock, like that shit's coming back. It's like nostalgic and that record for sure. I just had a realization though that I think I might have liked the Dixie Chicks too because they were girls, and I think seeing like girls in a band was like, oh, I can. Do you know what I mean? Like I could be in a band, you know?
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure like, you know, I'm lucky in the sense that like I saw representation growing up, you know. I just think about it too. That might have been why like at that time for me, I was into Backstreet Boys or whatever. You know, you just see like something that you could potentially be. Yeah.
All of my like the artists that really shaped me, I guess, when I was younger were female fronted because I could look up to them. Like Joan Jett's another example, or even like Hayley Williams, like Paramore back in the
Yeah.
day. Like I was, obsessed with Paramore. But if I saw like a chick being like a little bit edgier and doing, I was just always drawn to that.
Were your original songs more singer-songwriter country type
Like when I was
stuff?
younger?
Yeah.
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 I mean, I actually can show you a song, a little clip of a song when I was like a little kid, if you want to hear it.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Put it up to the mic.
So I had to do a thing in the public schools, there was this thing called Reflections,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like a art music competition for kids, and they would give you a prompt, and then you'd have to make something
Yeah,
for that prompt.
that's pretty sick.
And so this was my it's so funny. Hold on. All right.
Dang,
Yeah.
girl.
I was maybe like 6 or something.
Wow.
Wow,
That's
amazing.
incredible.
You wrote that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, my dad helped. My dad helped me with because I had to talk about courage and like use whatever, and so I didn't know who these people were. But
Yeah.
I remember my dad told me when I was older that he was having a hard time because I was like being like, no, we need to do this melody. Like I was really like get out of my way. Like
That is so sick.
yeah.
I would probably never show someone something I made, even when I was like in high school.
Yeah.
Oh, I
So-
wouldn't show the shit I made in high school.
I feel like it's different, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
that's
like,
different. That's-
wait, it's
this is like
six,
I'm just
so
a
it's
little
years.
kid.
6
yeah.
years old. It's like cute. There's like,
Yeah. No, my high school shit. No fucking way.
Yeah, that's
gosh. I mean, even like I think about like it's embarrassing now in hindsight. But like I thought it was the sickest thing. One of my first bands in high school was called Lovers Inertia.
Sick.
And we had we like went to our first gig and like it was like some like I don't know like a first Holy Communion or like I don't know some like
Yeah,
some
yeah,
like
yeah.
event after like where
Yeah.
people were just eating food and like no one wanted to hear our shitty punk style music.
I know. Thinking back, it's like how many parents just like stood there and be like, "Good job, guys."
Yeah, but we thought we were so cool, right? So we were like, we made shirts for ourselves, and like because it was like Lovers Inertia, we made like these white shirts with like a pink letter I with like a heart over for the dot.
That
right?
is so rad.
And like so we like showed up wearing like all button downs or whatever. And we're playing the show, and then like whenever we get to a moment we thought was cool, we like open them up like Superman status to show our
my
Lovers
God.
Inertia shirts, and like no one cared like at the whole venue,
Dude, we played in 7th grade. We played the talent show, and with my band Jimmy Darkness, and I remember like rolling up with our amps and just being like, we're gonna fucking slay this shit. We played like "Stay Together for the Kids,"
Oh,
like a Blink 182 song. And there was like my guitar was just so out of tune and just kids like jumping. It was the stupidest thing ever.
Oh man, I think like that's when I also learned like how much we weren't ready for our first gig too,
Yeah.
because like we had 10 songs and I thought we'd be able to play like hours, and then like 30 minutes go by and we're like, shit, we're out of songs and they need us to keep playing. So then we like just repeated the set. We did like the set all over again, like for a second time.
dude.
Yeah.
Was the reception like worse the second time, or better? I guess, right?
I don't think they cared. I think it
They
was
still
just
didn't
like,
care.
yeah, it was kind of like the worst thing. But yeah. Anyway.
Do you still have that music?
Oh,
Because I
somewhere.
can't find any of it.
I know I do. But we like also made like a bunch of like just the way you used to burn CDs back in the day, with little Sharpie. We wrote Lovers Inertia on them.
Yeah.
And I think like I have like a chest at my parents back in New Mexico where in there's probably like 50 of those burnt CDs with those tunes.
You have to get them.
Yeah, I'll find them. It's so bad.
That is hilarious.
And I remember like the way we recorded was like probably like a $99 condenser mic that we just put in the center of the room. And
Dude,
Yeah.
yeah,
Tried
definitely
to-
did
did the whole
those kinds
thing.
of recordings.
My
before.
brother, I got lucky because my brother owns a sound company in Denver, but he was always super into that stuff. So we had like Adobe Audition, and he would like mic up his kit. He had like a full setup downstairs. So I got to kind of cut some stuff that way. But we used to use one of those. Remember Zoom?
Yes.
We used to use one of those all the time.
Dang, that's pretty cool. And then it just like went to like an SD card.
Yeah.
Generally, right?
Yeah. And you'd have to like click through to find like the songs. And damn, that was the good old days.
Good old days. Yeah.
I remember seeing those like advertised in like a Guitar World magazines, always being like, "Oh, I need to save up for one of these."
Oh yeah.
I think by the time I got to like high school and stuff, like it was already pretty commonplace that like people had DAWs and like their own audio interfaces and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So-
I learned on Adobe Audition.
oh wow.
Dang.
And then I remember getting like Logic maybe. And then my parents and brother got me like a Rode NT1A.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how old I was, maybe in
Yeah.
9th grade or something. And that's when I started being like, fuck trying to be in a band. I'm going to like be my own band.
Mm.
And started to learn Logic and stuff.
Yeah. When you first moved out here, I know you used to play with a drummer.
Yeah.
Was that something that was he also from South Dakota, or did you meet him out here?
No, I met him out here. Yeah, I think we met like online,
Mhm.
How all musicians meet nowadays. And then we had coffee and we just like liked the same shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a complicated relationship. But
Sure.
yeah, at that time I had worked so hard to like, I still want to be in a band. Like I love being in a band, but it's hard, as you know. It's like a very difficult thing. And I think when I started to learn, because I played drums and whatever too, and when I started doing that out of necessity, having someone come in and be a part of it in a way where like it's, I don't know how to explain it, but having someone come in and being like, oh yeah, I need to let him do that part was really hard for me.
So letting go of creative control in some aspects.
Yeah. And
Interesting.
yeah.
I mean, I think we go through that a little bit in our world too. I think it's true with most creative projects, right? I think that's why it's set up that way for a lot of artistic endeavors, whether it's movies or music or anything, where there is someone who has a final say always, right? Because as much as you can want to have democracy, I think there also, specifically for the songwriter, needs to be some sort of artistic vision, right? And like even bands like The National, where like he very much says, I don't want anything to do with the instrumentals. Matt Berringer is just going to write the lyrics and the melodies at the end. Like there is that clear decision where he's like, there is a singular voice with the Desners, right? To be able to like, we're creating the musical idea and it filters through one person there. And then the melody and vocals filter through one person. But I think like it almost has to happen. So, but it is tough because there have been moments that even like within my band, I'm in a situation where there's sometimes I'm like, I really think this is the fucking groove that should be in the song. And Morgan's like, I need a pulse beat or something, and it's like, at the end of the day, he hears something. And then after we go through the whole process, I'm like, yeah, Morgan was right. But there are moments where it is hard to kind of let go because what I'm hearing and where I hear the future of the tune going, it's different from what he's seeing. So
in some ways, I almost wish I don't, but as an experiment, I almost wish I like didn't know how to program or play drums or didn't know how to play something. Yeah. Because then I would have to be relying on someone else's creative idea. Because for me, I have such a clear idea of what it should be and I can just play it in or make it, you know, that it's frustrating for me to like let go. But on the same hand, if I work with someone who I'm like, this person fucking rips, like I want them to do. Yeah.
Because they're going to do something so much better than you probably could ever even think of.
Or I like want their like personality to come through on the song or,
Yeah. And I think that's what like Morgan does a good job with me on is being able to like, whether it's like sing song drum type of stuff where he could be like, you know, and then like I get the vibe of what he's trying to do,
and then you can build on it,
give the finesse of it or whatever, you know.
Yeah, that's kind of how it worked with Alex and I, my old drummer, where it'd be like something like this, and then he would kind of interpret that. Yeah, and I miss aspects of that, but it was.
Yeah. I bring that up just because that's how I became first aware of you, was that video you guys did for I think somebody. Yeah. Yeah. And it's just like, that video ripped so hard. I loved it so much. And we know each other through Devon, who's been on the show. And, you know, he was just like touting, oh, look at this new project. And it's just like, it was so cool. And I loved that incarnation of the group.
I think that Devon is like my bandmate in a sense.
Yeah.
Like that relationship is the closest I have to, like, in a weird way. Like he's not just someone helping make my record, where we've built something together over many, many years.
Yeah.
And we don't even have to speak to each other. We know. It's like almost annoying because I'll be like, Dev, can you? And he'll be like, I already fucking know. I'm doing it. Like we don't even have to talk, you know?
Yeah.
So that's been kind of a band relationship. But it's nice because he's kind of the way Devon is creative is different than the way I'm creative, and we can kind of exist in the same space without feeling like someone's pulling. Sometimes we butt heads, but not really anymore.
Yeah, that's good. It's important to find people that you can work through that with, right? Where it's like no one's egos are getting hurt to the point that you can't continue to work together, right?
Yeah.
There might be moments of tension, but you learn how to work through that and picking your battles and knowing where.
Yeah, I think with him, he's like, there's a level of trust that's been built over so long, and we learned together, really. Like we've been making music for like 7-8 years now.
Yeah.
And everything, we've done so many songs together, hundreds, you know? And there's a trust there where I'm like, I know what I want. He knows I know that. And, but I can go, what do you think? How about this, you know? And he'll go, no, it should be this. And I'll go, cool. It takes this like, he lets me drive, but then I have that bouncing board. And plus he makes everything sound incredible. And I could never do that. So,
I mean, I know producers have always been this, but I think especially now producers play, you know, an even bigger role in making an album. Like, I don't know, for instance, when you're talking about the Chicks' new album, how Jack Antonoff is involved. Like, I may not really, you know, listen to a Dixie Chicks album just, you know, off of the strength of it, but I might check it out because Jack Antonoff is involved and I like him and I know that he makes, you know, music that I like.
That's a really interesting conversation. So Devon, the idea of the new producer, it's frustrating for me because one, I should say Devon is like an old school producer. He's a producer in the sense he likes to work with artists that are like artists, you know, and Devon's phenomenal at being that person that just helps you get it to the level it needs to be at. But he's not a producer in the sense of he's going to sit down and make a beat for you. That's not Devon. Right. You know what I mean? And that's why I work so well with him. And I know you guys have had the same experience.
Yeah.
But it's frustrating as a girl, as in music, people assume someone made it for me always. Or they go, who played guitar on your record?
Yeah.
Or like, wow, who produced this? And I'm like, why are you assuming that I didn't? You know what I mean? And so that's been a frustrating thing. And I think that's why Devon and I's relationship has lasted so long. Cause I feel that he actually respects what I do. And I respect what he does. But it's hard for me to go to sessions sometimes because there's this automatic assumption that because I'm a girl walking into the room, they are supposed to make the track and I just sing on it. And I'm like, dude, no, that is not me, you know?
Yeah.
It's been frustrating over the years, but that's why Devon and I have just meshed so well because he gets it.
That's just the way that music has been presented to us for so long. Like men have just had such a strong hold on the songwriting credits, the producing credits that like.
Well, I think that's starting to change. And I think people I think even with something like TikTok, when people can see women producing shit and making shit, like, I think it's starting to change and I'm so glad about that. But I've had plenty of people ask me like, oh, who made this? Like who produced this? It sounds cool. And I'm like, dude, me. Like, you know, me and Devon do it together, but usually I'll start an idea or get it pretty fully fleshed out or have like a part of it. And then I bounce stems to Devon and we go from there. We'll recut guitars, he'll layer samples, whatever. But yeah, it's been very frustrating. Just the assumption is annoying because men don't get that. Like the fact that people ask me who played guitar on your record, I've had so many people say that to me. I'm like, you would never ask a dude in an indie band who played guitar on your record.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so true.
You would never ask a dude that.
I wonder, I agree with you. I'll
Yeah.
start with
Yeah,
that, right? I wonder if it's also because you're solo, right? I'm wondering like how much is Layne on the record alone, right? Because like there are so many artists, even historically, where like I don't know the involvement from an instrumental perspective. Phoebe Bridgers, right?
Yeah.
She probably does the acoustic guitar and writes the songs, but like she also has people who come in and track the instrumentals,
Yeah.
right? And even some of the people that Devon works with, like historically, they've come in and they are some of the instrumentalists or they have to hire other people. So I don't think there is consensus all the time. And so
Yeah.
I wondered like just because
I mean,
you are one person, I don't know that I'd assume any one person does everything.
Yeah, and I mean, if we have a real drums on something, I'll have somebody do it. Obviously, I can't play drums that well, but I can. If it's like programmed, I program all the pattern, or
Yeah.
like the beat is coming from me. But I'll have like we had Ben play on the last record or the last song that just came out, and I like doing that. And I've had bass players come in and stuff like that. But I think about it in the same way, like someone like St. Vincent.
Right.
Some people look at her and they know she's a musician, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a woman that exists that you know is a musician. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
people just don't. I don't know. It's just the assumption that I think it's getting better. Things are changing, but I don't know. I just never liked the idea that a dude in an indie band would never get asked the exact same question, and it's purely because I'm a chick. Like, there's no other reason for it. Like, I know guys that are solo artists and people never ask them who played guitar on your record.
Yeah, they always assume they're always just like, oh, you did all this.
Yeah.
It's literally the exact opposite.
Yeah, that's
like, I'm sure if what's his name from Tame Impala was a
Right.
woman,
People would
be like, what?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point. Dang.
He does it all. There's plenty of women that do that. I just think it's, I don't know.
Speaking of powerful women in music,
Yeah.
let's talk about Joan Jett.
Oh, Joan.
What was your introduction to Joan Jett, and talk to me about that, like why she was so impactful for you?
I think my dad initially showed me Joan Jett, and I just saw myself in her like quickly, and I was very fascinated by, like, when I was an early teenager, I was fascinated by the idea of like the lifestyle of being in rock music at that time, and like and what it meant for her to like be one of the first. She was one of the first women in rock music. Like, she had to fucking kick some doors down. You know what I mean? I was interested in the Runaways before the movie came out, but when I saw the movie, it was like, I was obsessed with it. But yeah, she was just very influential in the way that, like, hearing the stories about how she's had to deal with misogyny and just not giving a fuck. Like, I just think it's badass that she walked into a male space and said, move out of the way. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, she totally pioneered rock music for females.
Yeah.
And in a 100% male dominated industry, similar to what we were talking about. So you're talking about the Kristen Stewart or Dakota Fanning one?
yeah.
Yeah. Do you like that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good.
I love that movie.
Yeah, I like always get so sad at the end.
I know.
And I don't even know, like, I think the movie does a good job of, like, because you know how it ends in some aspect, because you know they split up, and you know, like, the success that Joan Jett had, and like how oh gosh, I'm blanking the name. Is it
Cherie?
Yeah. When Cherie, like, she doesn't have the same type of success after. And so, like, when they're showing that part where, like, the songs are playing and she calls into the radio station, it's like, you, like, want to be, like, proud of, like, the Joan Jett character, but you also, like, kind of feel for the Cherie
I also
character.
think in, like, listening to interviews with with Cherie Currie herself, I don't think she wanted to be
that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that might have even also been a reason for the tension in that relationship in some aspects.
Yeah.
You know, like, because there was just a different desire, whether it was conscious or subconscious, right?
Yeah.
I think it was just like, for her, it seemed like, I'm enjoying this experience here in the moment, but, like, it's not my intention to do this forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's still, like, just sad, like, to think about just life paths, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And, like, that moment, they do a really good job in that movie of kind of just showing how that splits.
Yeah. I thought the whole story is just so fascinating. And I think I also, like, I tend to like romanticize. I know I have indie movies on there, but like
Yeah.
I'm sure as a kid, you guys would like look at rock stars and be like, oh, that'd be so cool. And you know,
Mm-hmm.
there's something about that story that I'm like, it's obviously speaks to me in many ways, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
also growing up listening to her. And I went to, you know, a show of hers when I was like 15
Mhm.
and just seeing her on stage, I was like, this is fucking sick, you know?
In Rapid?
Yeah.
Dang.
She played in Deadwood. Like that's where they have like the Sturgis rally and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I went and I was just, you know, like loud rock music. And she's like, you know, 65. She's like wearing tight leather pants and I was like, that is fucking sick. I got to meet her once
No
Whoa.
way.
and it was very scary.
Are you someone who gets starstruck?
I was with her.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, if I'm like a fan, like a real fan of someone,
Yeah.
I'll get a little, when I met Travis Barker, I was really starstruck.
Oh shoot! I didn't know you met him either. That's pretty sick.
Yeah, I did a session with John Feldman, and he played. The weirdest part was my voice coming through the monitors and seeing Travis Barker playing drums. I was like,
Oh
what the
wow!
fuck? Yeah, it was cool. But yeah, like people that I know, like I get starstruck around people like that I've like
Mhm.
studied my whole life. You know, I mean, when I met Joan, Jett, Miley Cyrus was there too, and I was way more starstruck by Joan than.
Then Miley.
I mean, it was cool to see her,
Yeah.
but
Dang,
Yeah.
that's so cool. Yeah, I know that me personally, like in Albuquerque, there was like in my head no reasonable reason why I would ever see a celebrity.
yeah,
You know? And so like the thought of it is still like exhilarating for me. And like it's never happened to me. Like I've gone to concerts, for example, and like
Yeah.
seen artists, like I've gotten them to sign merch or something. But like,
Do you remember when Shia LaBeouf was in Albuquerque?
yeah,
Like
did you go?
protesting? No, I didn't.
Oh.
I saw it
he
on
was
everybody's
he was at
Snapchat
the
story.
Echo when I thought you were there.
No, I wasn't. It was more when he was like handing out
Yeah,
those
yeah,
flyers.
yeah.
But he's like the celebrity that just like shows up everywhere because my one celebrity encounter ever since I moved out here was with him as well. But I didn't know it was him because Eric and we were walking down the street to a smoothie shop and there was a guy sitting outside. It was Shia. He was sitting outside the smoothie shop and Eric goes, "Doesn't that guy look exactly like Shia LaBeouf?" And I like took a second and I was like, identical. Like he looks
Yeah, yeah.
identical.
Yeah.
Like not even thinking it could be him. And we get our smoothies and we leave. And it was just like I kept thinking about it. And then I hop on Instagram immediately after, and that smoothie shop posted a photo with him. And I was
Oh.
like, that was him. Like,
That was-
and so like I didn't even allow myself to get starstruck because I didn't think it was
I'm
him.
so surprised you haven't met.
Anybody?
Yeah, that's surprising to me.
Well, I have like, but like, this is like, I always like break it up between like, I don't think I've had a true experience because it's not like in the wild. Like,
Right.
I think of it like, if I go to like a book signing, like I met Mike Birbiglia, the comedian, and I
Right.
really like him
But you've never met someone like
at Whole Foods or something like that. No.
I've seen a lot of people, but the only times I've met like celebrities or whatever is like because of like someone else
Yeah.
that I know or you know something
Mhm.
like that.
You know, I think one thing that's so fascinating to me, because I'm the same way. Like if I was to meet someone, or even like after a show, you know, like going to like a punk or like a hardcore show, the musicians, like they're gonna hang out. Like the vocalist is
Yeah.
gonna go and smoke a cigarette in the back,
Yeah.
and you're supposed to walk out there and take pictures and
Yeah.
meet them. Like that's the vibe, and it still always blows my mind. So it's interesting that someone like you know Sheree Curry, like when they don't want that, like because you know being a musician, like you think about like, oh, I want to be respected. I want people to love my art. And it's so fascinating to me that there's some people out there who like don't want
Well,
that at all.
I think not to say that I have any fucking idea, but from what I've heard and from, you know, I guess, I mean, I've lived in LA for 8 years. It's like I've seen enough, been around enough
Mm.
to see kind of like peak. It's one, not enjoyable for many people.
yeah.
Mm.
It can be really painful. You know what I mean?
You're saying
and
from
some-
the celebrity perspective?
Yeah, I think a
Mm.
lot of people, I mean, think about how many celebrities have drug addictions and
Yeah.
and all this stuff because you have everyone looking at you all the time,
Yeah.
and some people don't want that. Like,
Gosh.
there's a lot of downsides to that shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And yet we're all trying to.
I know we're all like running uphill. But I also heard something fascinating. Moby I listened to a podcast with Moby on it, and he was saying that the saddest he ever was when he was at the top of his career. He was at like an award show in a penthouse, and he was like had this moment of realization where he's like, what am I chasing? Because he like made it, like he's done everything, and he tried to open the window, and it was like one of the ones that wouldn't open very far. And he said if that window would have opened, he would have jumped, because you stop. Because think about it, we're chasing it. That's it. That's the fun part, is the chasing it. And you hear all these big musicians talk about, I miss like the, you know, going from 100 cap room to 1,000 cap room. Like, that's what makes you feel alive in it, you know?
Yeah. It's like, I've really tried to be more present for that reason, right? To recognize that, like, in some ways, when we're in the rehearsal space playing, like, this is it, like, right, that's what we're striving for. And like, there's this story of like a kid who in school every day would come and play in the sandbox, and without fail, every day at 10 a.m. he'd come and play in the sandbox, right? And one day someone went up to him and said, hey, I really love watching you play in the sandbox. You make these beautiful pieces. I'm going to pay you $2 a day to come in and play in the sandbox. And so he starts paying the kid $2 a day. And one time the guy comes and he forgot his wallet, so he can't pay the kid $2. And the kid was like, you know, since you can't pay me, I don't think I'm going to be playing in the sandbox anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so like you have to remind yourself, like, you are playing in the sandbox because you love playing in the sandbox, right?
100%.
And so we're seeking that $2 payment, right?
Yeah.
At the end, like, there's some sort of goal, but you know, at the end of the day, we have to remind ourselves, like, we do this because we love it, right? And as much as we want there to be success, or to be able to have a career, or to be able to meet benchmarks that we've set, like, we do this because we love it at the end of the day. And so I have to remind myself, like, when I'm in the rehearsal room, this is what
Also,
I want to be doing.
I think a lot of people, and Devon and I talk about this all the time, but there's this idea that like once you have this, then you're doing it. Like once you sign a deal, or once you do.
Yeah.
And that's just bullshit. It's just bullshit. It's a high interest loan. A lot of people have had really terrible experiences. And to remember, like, what do you want to be doing? Playing shows, making records. Guess what? You're already fucking doing it.
Yes.
You're already doing it. Like, what do you mean? Like, people have this idea that once they have this, then they're really doing it. But it's like, you're doing it currently. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
and if
true.
you treat what you're doing now like you're really doing it, then you're doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's hard to do that, right? Because it's ego and all of that stuff in our head. But yeah, it's a good, it's nice to remind yourself that that's true. Yeah. All right. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but we do have a couple more things to get through. I want to talk about Tim Burton. I think it's kind of interesting. We haven't had repeats on the show yet, which is awesome. We did have, like, this is kind of one where we're kind of like broaching the subject a little bit, where we talked a lot about Big Fish on a previous episode. But I'm interested to hear, what was your entry point to Tim Burton? Why do you love him so much? What was your, how is it impactful for you?
I think, like, aesthetically, I remember being a kid and seeing, like, Nightmare Before Christmas and stuff like that, and being like, I want to live in that world. Like, I just want to live in, like, I know Coraline isn't Tim Burton, but like these. It
was inspired by it, clearly. Yeah.
These like dreary kind of, just the world, that the way he thinks about the world. I've always loved that. Like, that's why I like Seattle and rainy places. And, last year when I was in Edinburgh, the creepy buildings, and it's like dreary. There's something in my soul that just loves that. I feel safe in it. I don't know why, but I was always just really into the claymation and like the way he thinks about color. And I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's just something that I look at, and like, people always say, like, oh, I love the beach, I want to go to Hawaii. I'm like, I want to go to like somewhere spooky and like and when I was a kid, I used to love, like, Halloween was my favorite.
Yeah.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, I loved Halloween.
Yeah, it's the best. And
like the smell of, my dad and I always talk about the smell of fall coming in. It's like me and my dad's thing, and we would always I don't know, I love that feeling. That's honestly what it is. And then old photos of Tim Burton, like the 90s, he just looks so fucking like, it's like this, he kind of looks like all the dudes in The Cure, like that kind of like era of like emo. I don't even know what it is, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I think is super interesting is, and you touched on it with like the corpse or Coraline, was that he inspired a feeling, right, in the film industry in some aspects. Like everything you see that he does, you know, it's a Tim Burton project for the most part, right? There are these some little offshoots, but like, you know, even like the spins, like when he does things like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or
it has a
Alice
Tim
in
Burton
Wonderland.
style. Yeah.
You know, there is a difference in what that looks like.
There's like a darkness. It's like quirky darkness to everything. And I love it.
Yeah, and I think it's all like I think I was reading somewhere that someone explained it like gothic fantasy or something like that, you know? And everything has that. And when we were talking about Big Fish or Pee-wee's Big Adventure, like those types of projects, like even those that are a little bit more real still have something in there where it's just
it
like
feels a little outside of reality.
Yeah.
There's something kind of off. Or like Edward Scissorhands or Beetlejuice, all those, you know, the characters are always just like a little bit weird. I love it. I don't know.
Yeah. I was like, I've learned to appreciate it a little bit more later in life. I was scared of a lot of the stuff when I was younger. Like I remember like Sleepy Hollow.
Oh yeah.
When that movie came out,
yeah.
I was so scared. And like James and the Giant Peach.
I love James and the Giant Peach.
I do in hindsight, but at the time,
were
like,
you scared of it then?
Yeah, like the centipede.
Oh yeah.
The centipede
I
character.
loved that movie. I was
freaked
like, this
me
is
out.
so cool.
Yeah, I think like just everything, a lot of those movies, Nightmare Before Christmas included, like are very dark, right? Like it's black. There's a lot of black.
Yeah.
I was like, I think just subconsciously like scared as a kid.
Yeah.
So I didn't really.
That's
like,
interesting. You're making me think about myself. I'm like, why do I like loved that shit.
But you're not alone, right?
Yeah.
And
Oh,
I
I
think
did
that's
too.
I think that's
I
what's
loved it.
interesting is like there was like you could probably meme it a little bit, but like there was like a 30% of high school girls and guys, right?
Yeah.
That like that was their vibe.
Yes. I mean,
through
I
certain
wouldn't go
sections
that
of school,
far.
right?
There's some weirdos repping Jack Skellington shit, but
Yeah,
Oh, dude, I had this.
they're
Jack's-
lovely people.
no,
But yes.
sorry. I didn't mean weirdos. I mean, just, you know, when they're fully decked out, I'm like, all right, I'm not going to go that far. Not weirdos. I think it's rad. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do it.
I had
Do
this
your thing.
Jack Skellington hoodie that I wore for like every day in 8th grade. So that was my vibe. Just in
Yeah.
case you're wondering.
What did it, was it like just him on there? On the,
It was like a zip up hoodie with like a bunch of different like of his different faces, like the different face
Oh, okay.
models, like all over it. And I wore it, and it had holes in it, and I wore it every single day.
Yeah.
safety
in the
blanket.
summer. Yeah.
I love that.
And then I had a beanie that had his face on it.
Dang,
That was just. That
Would
was
you
my vibe.
double deck? Would you wear?
I would not.
Okay.
No.
Lane just roasted you, man.
I did just roast you. I feel so bad. You know what I'm saying though.
Yeah, I
it's
do.
like
Oh, yeah.
anything. If someone's like super into Disney and they're fully decked out, I'm like,
It's too much.
I mean, I'm happy for them, but
Yeah.
it's a lot, you know?
Mhm.
yeah, it is.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that like my alternative was much better. Like I, in high school, like wore the Hollister and Aeropostale.
Really?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. That was like for definitely like my first 2 years of high school. And then like towards the end of high school, I was like wearing like Vans stuff and stuff all the time. And it kind of shifted. But yeah, I definitely was like Hollister shirts and like Aeropostale jeans, like
Oh my
that
God.
type of stuff.
Dude,
That
that was an
era.
era. That
Yeah.
reminded me of like.
Puka shell.
Oh yeah. It's coming back. I got one on right now.
Yeah, it is coming back. That reminds me of like my. Yeah, it was like later middle school for me, like early high school, and that's what everyone wore and listened to like Boys Like Girls.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
So let me tell you, like, this is actually a really good transition into your last one because I think my whole last 2 years of high school vibe was Michael Cera, right?
I am I love Michael Cera.
Yeah, I do too. And like, I thought he was like the coolest. And like the peak for me, I loved Juno, which I know you like talked about here when you're talking about indie rom-coms. But I loved Juno. But immediately after, there was Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist.
I love that fucking movie.
Me too. It's one of my favorites ever. And like the way he's dressed in that in that
Mhm.
movie. I just like wanted to be him so bad. And like I love that movie so
See,
much.
Yeah, so like indie movies like that, or even like Scott Pilgrim versus the World,
Mhm.
or there's this movie called In the Land of Women. If you haven't seen
I've
it,
never seen that one.
You should see it. No, not In the Land of Women. 20th Century Women. You
Mm,
should see that. It's really
okay.
good. But those, so I've been rewatching a lot of those indie movies lately, and I'll watch them and take notes, like just
Mm.
in my journal of anything, like
Yeah.
colors, ideas, like shit like that, and then I'll write songs about them.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and because there's something that takes me back to being, that age when it's like everything feels like 13, like when you're 13 and everything feels like the idea of like being in love or like your future
Yeah.
and all these things, everything feels so like exciting but scary, and like when I watch these indie movies, I'm like transported back to that time,
Yeah.
and I just love it. And so I've been just rewatching them and trying to write songs.
Yeah, all of those movies had such an impact on me personally too. Like for so many reasons. Like when you put this down, I went back and revisited some of this stuff, like musically especially, right? The soundtracks
Totally.
on all of these movies were like killer. And so like it was my identity. Like these soundtracks like were what I had on my iPod or whatever to go listen, and how I found some of these bands. And like I have this story where like actually I don't even know if I'll share it. But I was like, there was this first time I was like seeing this like indie type of girl in high school.
Oh, Indie Dream Girl. I love
Yeah.
Indie Dream Girl.
And like I was like, grew up in a small town, and so like the date was you go to like a dinner and a movie or
Mhm.
whatever. And I was like, hey, let's go out like to Albuquerque, which is like 30 minutes away from where I grew up. And so we decided to go out on this date, and we met up there, and I'm like, oh, let's go to like dinner and a movie or whatever. She's like, no, let's go to the public library. And so like we walked to the public library, and she was like
Cute.
showing me all like these comics and stuff like that. And I remember like I just seen Nick and Nora's, and so like I had that soundtrack, and so then like us like making out in the car later, like it was just like
Oh my
the whole
God,
thing.
this
Like I
is
just
so
feel
cute.
that whole like experience, like, and so when we went back and listened, like it just flashed back to like that
Yeah.
moment for me, and I was just like, I had forgotten that memory in
That's
so many
exactly
ways.
what I'm saying though, that feeling of
Yeah.
like,
You were Michael Cera.
yeah.
Yeah,
You got
in
to
a lot
live
of
it.
ways.
And
yeah.
and I also think seeing like being from a small town and not seeing like indie kids, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
I really always identified with like the carabiner emo, like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing like indie movies like that where the kids looked like how I wish I could dress, but I
Yeah.
like was in a small town. And like the like the cuteness, or like Adventureland. I don't know if you've ever seen
Yes,
Adventureland.
I love that movie too.
I would just like daydream about those movies, you know?
Yeah.
There's just such a feeling. That's such a cute story, by the way. That's
Yeah.
fucking adorable.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a certain type of like nostalgia that is interesting, because it's like I don't necessarily long for that person, but like that
Right.
feeling, like you were talking about, like I it felt like they do such a good job in those movies of capturing that feeling. And when you first
Yeah.
experience it yourself, it's kind of like chicken or the egg. I don't know if the movie
Yeah.
influenced like it felt like the movie, and so that's why it felt good, or like they do a good job of capturing what it feels like to be in that
Well,
time.
I used to have all through like high school, I had a crush on this girl,
Mhm.
and I would just like always it was the girl, the indie girl. Like it was
Mhm.
like I was just so in love with this girl. She never knew, but eventually I dated her later when I was older,
Yeah.
23, and it was like for the first couple months we were talking, I was like, I got the indie girl. I had that feeling of like being in 9th grade, being like, she likes me, like
Yeah.
finally, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just instantly took me back to that like over romanticizing this, like, I don't know. I love it. I love
Yeah.
that feeling.
What I always come back to Nick and Nora's, I think, because that one was so much more like impactful for me. But like, it was also really cool because like in that movie, both Nick and Nora have like ex partners that are like not good partners to them.
Yeah.
You know, and there's like a clear moment that they come to the realization that like he's still hung up on this ex girlfriend, and she like keeps her ex boyfriend like around, and like they have a moment of like, oh no, like a epiphany. And like, yeah, I just really love that movie.
I also love the like, I think why people like Michael Cera and Jesse shit, what's his name?
Eisenberg.
work in these movies is because there's this like awkward innocence and like realness, like in Adventureland when he's like in the pool
Yeah, yeah.
and he like
yeah.
gets out and you're like, oh god,
Yeah.
dude. But it's like so real, like, you know.
Yeah. I think it's
And I think exploring the beginning of exploring what like love and like romance feels like, and it's
But in like the real world.
yeah, it's,
yeah, you're not looking at Taylor Lautner,
Right.
You know, I'm like, I'm never gonna look like that dude,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like, and a lot of what people are drawn to is like the slow-mo, and it's for women too, but the slow motion shot because of how beautiful they are,
Yeah.
right? And it's like no one was doing that for Michael Cera of a shot walking down the
Yeah.
halls because he
Yeah.
looks so hot, right?
Yeah.
And even the females, like, I mean, Elliot Page in
Mm-hmm.
Juno, and Michael Cera's character and Kat Dennings' character in all these movies
Yeah.
we're talking about, they're played to be
Yeah.
normal, right?
Real
like
people.
these are real people.
Not
they
like
are
the
all
pop.
beautiful, right? Kat
Yeah.
Denning is beautiful. Elliot Page is beautiful.
Yeah.
Like they are.
but you find them attractive because of like, you know, I feel like you notice these cute things about them that makes them enchanting in some way, and I love that. There's a cuteness.
yeah.
Yeah, just like Michael Cera and Juno, Polly Bleeker's whole like routine in the morning, you know, kind of like getting his socks and
The
you know
Tic
everything to
Tacs
go
and
run.
the
Yeah.
deodorant in between
Yeah.
his legs
Yeah.
and stuff
That's-
like that.
Have you
Yeah.
guys? This is not quite an indie rom-com, but have you guys ever seen The Rocker?
I
Yes.
love that movie.
The
Yeah.
Rocker is so fucking good.
Oh my gosh! And
Oh, I loved that movie.
Teddy Geiger.
Yeah.
Like I thought they were like so cool. Like,
I just realized that the other day. I was like, that's Teddy Geiger.
mm-hmm.
Is it Emma Stone in that movie?
Yeah.
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 And Dwight Schrute, Rainn Wilson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like the main
That
character.
movie is so good.
It is so
Definitely
good.
an underrated one from
Well,
that era.
I listened to a podcast with Rainn Wilson talking about how he did that movie, and then it just bombed.
Yeah.
And he was like devastated, like cried in the car and stuff. And then now it's one of those like cult. Like he was talking about how people will like say to him that they love The Rocker, and
Yeah, I still think of that song. Like I don't even know how the full song goes, but there's times like, you know, like songs like come into your head consistently.
Yeah.
That's one where like randomly, anytime anyone says the word bitter,
Oh,
I think
yeah.
of that movie because I'm not bitter, but I've seen better days. And like that's the only line that comes to my head.
see, that's okay. That with this new record I'm trying to write, I want to capture the feeling of an indie movie like that, where you'd hear it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that feeling of listening to a song. In an
I
indie
think what
movie.
you're doing is like going to help you get there,
Yeah.
right? Like I think the things you're writing when you're watching these things and going back and subconsciously the soundtrack and stuff like that, it's going to give you that vibe, at least
Yeah.
put you in that headspace, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Such an iconic scene for me that I think about is it's iconic for this era and this type of movie is Scott Pilgrim
Oh yeah.
with the
Versus
scene with
World.
Envy Adams, where she like they realize that like one of the evil exes is in a band with Scott's ex,
Oh
and it's
yeah.
Envy,
Yeah,
like-
yeah.
and she's like on the stage, and he's just like, oh no, like I totally don't want to be here, and like just that I don't know, I just love the way that they portray Scott in that movie. I feel like is also, you know, very epitomizes the everyman. He's just some 23-year-old
Yeah.
guy who's like just lives with his friends and wants to play music and doesn't want to run into his ex because
Yeah.
he's still super hurt about it. Like it's just so
He's
I
also-
love that movie.
I was talking with someone about this. Oh, Brianna, who does social media for the show. We were talking about no one's a really good person in that movie. Like
No.
they're all
Yeah.
like pieces of shit.
No.
But like except for like his sister. His sister
Yeah.
is like fine in that movie. And then we were also like kind of like really shocked at like in hindsight, that cast was insane. Like Chris Evans, who's Captain America, and Brie Larson, who's Captain Marvel, and Aubrey Plaza,
Yep.
Yeah.
Anna Kendrick. Like there was just like a star-studded cast. It's kind of crazy. All right, well we'll get you out of here, Layne. Before we go though, we do ask everyone rapid fire 5 questions. Okay.
All right. hit
So
me.
if you could be on a reality TV show, which one would you choose?
I'd be on The Bachelor. I don't know if I'd want to be one of the contestants.
Oh, you'd want to be the
I think
person.
well, no, that seems like too much emotional trauma. I don't know.
Like Next from MTV.
Yeah.
Just give me 5 people that I can next or whatever.
Oh, Nexus was sick. It was also mean as fuck.
Oh,
Like,
so
yeah.
mean.
no, I don't know. I can't think of any. Maybe I would want to be on like like one of the, not Naked and Afraid, but something like that, like a
Survivor show.
yeah, but not Survivor.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. All right. If people have never experienced any of the things on your pop 5, what would be the one thing that you want them to go experience right now?
Like all those indie movies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. I'm going to say Nick and Nora's for you.
Yeah, Nick and Nora's in my playlist.
Or sorry, if you knew that the next show you played was going to be your last show,
Oh my God, sad.
what
Okay.
would you close with? Which one of your songs would you
Oh
finish
my
with?
God, I wouldn't be able to get through that show. I would cry I'd probably end with a really sad song.
Yeah.
I have a new one that's not out
Oh, cool.
that I would maybe play, but
All
it's
right.
really sad. So
Nice.
and I
Cool.
could just
What would you open with then? I just want people to go stream one of your songs.
okay. With my new song. I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. Actually, maybe, yeah. I would
Yeah.
open with the newest one, Monday.
Perfect. And we'll play it here as well.
Okay, sick.
Awesome. What is something you learned about yourself during the pandemic?
So much. I learned a lot about, I'm a very extroverted person, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I always needed people's energy around me, but I really learned how to be alone in a good way. I had a lot of epiphanies actually about what matters, and I healed a lot from a lot of shit. Pretty much all good stuff. I started therapy, started meds. Like
That's amazing.
I feel like it was a really, really impactful year for me as a growing person.
All right, last one. What are 5 words or a phrase you would tell a past version of yourself?
I would probably say your ego won't protect you.
Oh, okay. That's amazing. All right, lastly, I know you talked about Monday. Is there anything else you want to promote, or where can people follow you?
Yeah, just Layne's World, like Wayne's World. Layne's World _ on Instagram. Twitter I don't use, but you can follow me if you want. And then, I have another song coming out with my buddy John Michael in a couple weeks. And more music after that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And we'll include all the links to everything she's talking about in the episode description.
Hell yeah.
Thanks so much for coming,
Thank
Layne.
you for having me, guys.
Thank
It
you.
was so much fun. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye.
That'll do it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening. I want to send you out with a really special treat. Layne mentioned at the end of the episode a special song that she did with a friend named John Michael, whose artist name is Love Under the Sun. This song doesn't come out until next Friday, but we got permission to play it for you here. So we'll see you next week, but until then, here's Sepia by Layne and Love Under the Sun.
Is this what you wanted? Well, this house is haunted. Scared to death, do I deserve it? This punishment every second. You put me down, you make me nervous. I'm filled with doubt, filled with purpose. I used to dream in rambling roads. Now I sleep through sepia tones, tossing, turning, breaking my bones. All alone, all alone. I used to dream in rambling roads. Now I sleep through sepia tones, tossing, turning, breaking my bones. All alone, all alone.
I left, 'cause you're right. Swinging your sword, swinging all the time.